Now, just a little warning before we begin that there will be spoilers for the latest episode of The Bad Batch in this video, which is the 7th episode, or the one called Battle Scars. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it's a really good time to click away. Okay, so let's kick this off by talking about the mystery character from the end of the previous episode and how we now know who that is. And of course, last week in my video, I predicted it was going to be Ahsoka. All the clues, especially R7, being the droid that the Martez sisters had, they pointed in her direction until many in the comments pointed out that Rafa had said patch him through and not patch him or patch them through, like I thought she had said. At that point, especially since we've seen him in the trailer, I think it became pretty clear it was going to be Rex, which it turned out to be, which is awesome. I don't think anybody's complaining about that. Though I did see a lot of people predicting maybe Bail Organa, which is a good and interesting guess too. And I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually see him in this series, especially when and if the Bad Batch do become a part of the rebellion down the road, or in a few seasons, perhaps. That said, I just don't know how much Bail Organa would actively and behind the scenes be moving against the Empire at this current point in time. I'd guess that maybe he still has hope that the Senate can sort of regain power back from Palpatine. Either way, I don't know that he'd be out there recruiting just yet for the early rebellion, just days or weeks after the rise of the Empire, and that the Martez sisters would be some of his first recruits. Speaking of the very early days of the rebellion then, it's interesting to see Rex a part of it, and he does seem to be. I think he was there in the first place to try and recruit the Bad Batch, but as he basically says at the end of the episode, he realizes they have different priorities right now, and those priorities are to look after Omega. But anyway, it's interesting to see him a part of it now, because we know eventually he won't be a part of the rebellion anymore, before then coming back to it again as seen in Rebels. We know somewhere along the way he goes off and lives with Wolf and Gregor, and I don't think this is any sort of plot hole or inconsistency or anything. In fact, I think it makes more sense that Rex did sort of immediately fight back against the Empire, instead of just sort of saying screw it and laying low for all those years. And I mean, when we see him in Rebels, it's basically 17 or so years later, or after the Clone Wars, and who knows what's happened in that time to make him stop fighting, to leave the rebellion. Maybe he just felt like he was getting too old for this sort of thing, who knows. But I do like it better that our boy Rex didn't just sit on the sidelines for all those years, that he did continue to fight for the Republic, as he basically says in this episode. And I think, though I could certainly be wrong, it's heavily implied he's still working with Ahsoka when at the end of the episode he's talking about rendezvousing with someone, and I don't think he's talking to the Martez sisters or anything. And I think we'll see Ahsoka at some point in this series, maybe for the finale of the first season, or maybe in a later season, whenever Rex comes back to them and says he needs their help, and Hunter did say they'd always be there if needed. And I was happy that Rex didn't convince them to join the rebellion right there and then, that the Bad Batch is going to stay clear of all that, at least for now. As I said before, I could see them joining the rebellion later on, or a few seasons down the road, which is fine. But I'm happy that, again, for now, they're going to take odd jobs, or work as mercenaries, or whatever they're going to do. And doing some shadier things at times is certainly going to happen, I think. Like I've said before, I want to see them basically struggle with the line between doing what's right and what must be done in order to survive. Moving on then, this episode was basically all about two things. The first being the Bad Batch getting their chips removed. And I'm a bit surprised to see it happen this early in the season. I thought this might be something that dragged on a little longer, maybe all the way to the season finale, where Wrecker's chip would finally go completely haywire and cause even more issues, or that he might be on the verge of dying from the chip, and then they had to quickly figure out a way to get it out, and somehow it would connect with Crosshair and maybe trying to save him too. Though I will say when Wrecker's chip finally did take hold of him, and it took hold of him coincidentally enough just minutes before it was about to be removed, like the chip was somehow self-aware and knew it had to trigger then and there or never get the chance to. And I'm not saying I think it's self-aware, just that it was some crazy timing, all done of course in the name of tension and drama. But anyway, when the chip activated finally, it was quite scary. Wrecker was pretty terrifying as a bad guy. It's amazing how the one we see as the lovable brute can become or feel like an absolute terror or monster with a flip of the switch. And I'm glad they played it as sort of a horror movie there, trying to hide from him and trying to mess with us by thinking he was about to find Omega, but didn't. And I'm also glad Omega wasn't able to talk him down, that he had to be stunned by Rex, or he almost certainly would have killed her, I think. And he probably would have eventually killed the others as well. that this wasn't all resolved with him just overcoming it because of Omega. Because though the other big part of this episode was trying to build up a bond or relationship between Wrecker and Omega, and I'm sure Tech and Echo will get their episodes with her in due time, I wouldn't buy it that after maybe a couple weeks, there was a great enough bond between the two where she was able to break through the chip's control of him, when other clones who have served with and befriended their Jedi generals after years and years of service, they were completely powerless against the chips and became good soldiers following orders. Even Rex, who in the back of his mind knew the truth about the chips thanks to Fives, though Wrecker technically knows the truth too, he was only able to very briefly resist it when face to face with Ahsoka, who he'd known for so very long and obviously respects and cares about. Though Rex did mention something about a few other clones being immune to the effects, though who knows if anything is going to come with that or if it's just a little piece of filler information. Going along with all this then, I was a little confused to see Rex freak out when he learned that the Bad Batch hadn't had their chips removed yet. I mean, why would he assume that they had? Why would he assume they even knew about the chips in the first place? I mean, sure, part of me likes that Rex freaks out because he knows and gets how dangerous they are. We can see at multiple points in the episode that he sort of has a PTSD in regards to them and the whole incident, which you can understand. And there is also a great moment in this exchange where Rex is talking about how dangerous the chips can be to everyone around them, including to Omega, and Hunter looks at her briefly, and it's after that when he starts to agree that they need to do something about these chips. But still, I think Rex should have gone into this meeting with the Bad Batch assuming they still had chips in their heads, that they wouldn't even know about them, though I suppose Rex maybe assumed they would have figured it out thanks to how crazy all the regs had been acting, that something must be making them do all this. Moving on from that though, this was yet another episode where we didn't get anything from the Imperial side of things, another episode without Crosshair. Though at the end, those members of the Scavenger Guild that saw them, they contact the Empire, which leads me to believe soon enough, maybe next week even, we'll get another episode with Crosshair that he'll be sent after the Bad Batch again. And though I think the last few episodes, including this one, have been good and enjoyable, I do miss that side of things. Everything going on with the Empire and the Kaminoans is very intriguing, and as I said last week, I wouldn't mind getting entire episodes from just that side of things from time to time. So to start to wrap this up, the main point of the episode again was to show more of a bond between Wrecker and Omega, and I think it does a good job of that. They make a good pair since, as Hunter kind of pointed out, they are both a little childlike in a way, which is why when Wrecker turns, it was even scarier, I think. It was a great contrast to how he was earlier in the episode, like when he and Omega are getting their Mantel mix, which looks like space popcorn to me, and it's all just a reminder of how dangerous Wrecker really can be when he wants to be. It was also just awesome to see Rex again. He is one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, and his return, I think, sets up more of him down the road, and potentially more Ahsoka, or some Ahsoka, we haven't seen her yet, and that will get some early rebellion at some point. Like I said, I'm not going to be surprised if, in a couple seasons, the Bad Batch is working with them, but for now, I'm glad to see them separate from all that. I'm glad this is at least somewhat of a different formula from what we've seen before elsewhere, and so far, it's been a very enjoyable one. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this episode. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it somewhere in between? And how are you feeling about this series overall? Do you want to see them eventually in the rebellion or not? Do you like them completely separate from all that? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.